Ever get that creepy feeling like you're being watched? Well, if you're holding a takeout container right now, you kind of are, by those tiny plastic particles it's shedding.
Oh, it's true.
And that, my friend, is just the tip of the plastic iceberg we're diving into today.
Yeah.
We're talking about the massive tangled relationship between plastics and what's being called the tripleplanetary crisis of pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss. And knowing you want the full picture, not just the headlines.
Absolutely. And this isn't just about those heartbreaking photos of turtles caught in six-pack rings anymore.
Right.
This is about the very air we breathe, the water we drink, even the food we eat.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with the research you flagged for this deep dive. A paper in Environment International titled A Multidisciplinary Perspective on the Role of Plastic Pollution in the Triple Planetary Crisis.
It's a mouthful, but it gets right to the heart of the issue. Scientists are finally connecting the dots between all these different ways plastic is impacting our planet.
Right, and the paper doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the sheer scale of the problem, does it? I mean, 9,200 million tons of plastic produced since the 1950s.
Yeah.
9,200 million. Can you even imagine that much plastic?
It's almost impossible to wrap your head around, isn't it? It's like trying to picture all the grains of sand on all the beaches in the world. But here's the kicker. It's not just the plastic itself we need to be concerned about.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because when I think of plastic, I think of it as this one thing. But you're telling me it's not that simple?
Not even close. This research uncovered something startling. A hidden world of plastic additives. We're talking about another estimated 640 million tons of chemicals added to make those takeout containers, water bottles, and even clothes functional.
Additives. So, like, there's stuff in my clothes besides just the fabric.
You got it.
What even are these additives?
They're the secret sauce that gives plastic its superpowers. Flexibility, durability, even flame retardancy. But there's a catch. These additives are often trade secrets, which means their production is largely undisclosed.
Hold on. Undisclosed.
Yeah.
So we don't even know what's in most of the plastic we use every day.
You got it. And that's a huge GE problem because it makes it incredibly difficult to track their risks, manage their disposal, or even recycle them effectively. Remember those plastic particles you mentioned earlier?
That's haunting me from my lunch container, yes.
Those particles aren't just bits of pure plastic. They're likely carrying a cocktail of these hidden additives, which can potentially leach into our food, water, and the environment.
Okay, that is seriously creepy.
Mm.
So it's not just a question of what happens when plastic ends up in a landfill or the ocean, but what happens is it breaks down literally everywhere.
You're catching on. And the way plastic breaks down, or doesn't, is another layer of complexity in this story. It's not like glass or paper that decompose into harmless substances. Plastic just keeps breaking into smaller and smaller pieces.
Right. We've all heard about microplastics, but I get the feeling there's more to the story.
Definitely. Think of it like this. You have those big chunks of plastic we can easily see, like that takeout container. But then those break down into microplastics. Those tiny particles can be as small as a grain of salt. But it doesn't stop there. Those microplastics can then degrade into even tinier bits called nanoplastics.
Nanoplastics. That sounds straight out of a science fiction novel.
It might sound futuristic, but trust me, it's our reality now. These nanoplastics are basically invisible to the naked eye, and they're incredibly difficult to study. But we're finding them everywhere, from the Arctic to the bottom of the ocean to the air we breathe.
So we're talking about a whole other level of plastic pollution that we're just starting to understand.
Exactly. And because plastic has this complex chemical structure, it doesn't break down the same way everywhere. It's kind of like how a rock erodes over time, but imagine that erosion happening in unpredictable bursts and spurts depending on where it's landed.
So what does that even mean for trying to track and manage this plastic as it breaks down? Is it even possible? It's like trying to wrangle smoke. How do you even begin to clean up something that's constantly changing and spreading?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It's not just about cleaning up the mess we've already made, though that's obviously important.
Right.
It's about rethinking our entire relationship with plastic, from its production to how we use it, and yes, even to how we dispose of it.
So we need to get smarter about plastic, not just use less of it.
Exactly. We need to move away from this linear take, make, dispose model and embrace a circular economy for plastic. Imagine a world where plastics are designed to be reused, repaired, or even fully biodegrade back into harmless substances.
That sounds amazing, but is it even possible with all those hidden additives we talked about? How do you even begin to recycle something when you don't know what's in it?
That's the challenge, and it highlights the urgent need for greater transparency from the plastics industry. We need to know exactly what chemicals are being used and in what quantities, so we can develop safe and effective recycling technologies.
And maybe even start phasing out the most problematic additives altogether. I mean, if we're designing plastic for a circular economy, shouldn't it be free of those potentially harmful extras?
You're spot on. It's about finding safer alternatives, innovating new materials, and designing products with their entire life cycle in mind. That might mean asking ourselves some tough questions, like what products are truly essential and which ones we can live without.
It's about rethinking convenience, isn't it? That single-use plastic water bottle might seem harmless in the moment, but it's part of a much bigger system that's impacting the entire planet. And that brings us to this idea of sustainable plastic governance. It's more than just regulations, right?
You're catching on. It's about addressing the social, economic, and even cultural factors that drive our plastic consumption. It's about finding ways to shift consumer behavior, promote innovation, and create a level playing field for businesses that are genuinely committed to sustainability.
So this isn't just about scientists and labs. It's about policymakers, businesses, and even everyday consumers all working together.
Precisely. It's a collective effort, and that includes you listening to this right now.
That's right. You, our plastic-wary, deep-dive-loving friend, are a crucial part of the solution.
Because even small changes in our daily lives can have a ripple effect. Choosing reusable products, supporting companies with sustainable practices, advocating for stricter regulations, these are all ways to be part of the solution.
It reminds me of that saying, think globally, act locally. But before we get to the individual action items, let's zoom back out to the global stage. There's a lot of talk about a global plastics treaty. What's the latest there? And could that be the game changer we need? It feels like the whole world is waking up to this plastic problem, but can a single treaty really turn the tide?
That's the hope, but it's definitely not a guaranteed win.
Right.
The treaty has the potential to be a major turning point, but only if it's ambitious and comprehensive.
So no half measures.
Yeah.
What would a truly impactful plastics treaty actually do?
It needs to address the entire life cycle of plastics from that initial production with all its hidden additives to consumption patterns and, yes, even how we manage plastic waste on a global scale. Think of it like a global game plan to tackle the plastic problem.
So no more kicking plastic waste across borders and hoping for the best.
Ideally not. The goal is to create a unified approach with clear targets and regulations. But it also needs to factor in the needs of developing countries and ensure a just transition away from our current plastic dependence. This paper we've been discussing actually stresses the need for more research on what sustainable plastic governance looks like in practice.
It's like we're trying to build a plane while we're flying it.
In a way, yes. We need to act urgently, but we also need to be strategic and make sure the solutions we implement are effective and equitable in the long term. It's about finding that delicate balance between urgency and thoughtful action.
That makes a lot of sense, but it also feels a little overwhelming. Where do we even begin to untangle this global web of plastic?
It can feel daunting, but I think it's also empowering. The fact that we're having this conversation, that we're asking these tough questions, is a sign that we're moving in the right direction. And remember, the research we've been discussing with its multidisciplinary approach is a huge step in the right direction.
It's about connecting the dots between these seemingly separate crises, pollution, climate change, biodiversity loss, and realizing they're all connected.
Precisely. They're interconnected, and so are the solutions. We need scientists studying the impacts of plastic pollution on ecosystems, working alongside economists who are modeling the costs and benefits of different plastic governance strategies. And let's not forget those social scientists who can help us understand the cultural and behavioral factors that influence our consumption patterns. It's about seeing the big picture together.
So where do we go from here? We've learned a lot in this deep dive, but we've also uncovered a lot of unknowns.
It's true, there's still so much we don't know about plastics and their long-term impact on our planet and ourselves. But that's not a reason to throw up our hands and give up. It's a call to action.
What can each of us do in our own spheres of influence to be part of the solution?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but I think it starts with awareness, with educating ourselves and others about the true costs of our plastic dependence.
And then taking that knowledge and turning it into action.
Exactly. Whether it's supporting a local organization working on plastic reduction, contacting your elected officials to advocate for stronger regulations, or simply making more conscious choices in your own life, every little bit helps. Remember those reusable products we talked about.
Right. swapping that disposable coffee cup for a reusable one, choosing products with minimal packaging, and opting for sustainable alternatives whenever possible.
Exactly. These small changes might seem insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but they all add up. It's about shifting from a mindset of apathy to one of action, from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered.
It's about shifting the narrative from one of despair and helplessness to one of hope and possibility.
Because change is possible, but it requires all of us to be part of the solution.
Couldn't agree more. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from those hidden additives lurking in plain sight to the complexities of plastic's impact on the planet and ourselves, and the potential for a global plastics treaty to change the game.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
But hopefully, you, our listener, are walking away with a newfound understanding of this critical issue and perhaps a new perspective on that takeout container you're holding.
And a sense of agency, knowing that you have the power to make a difference, even in small ways.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Given what you've learned today, what's one single-use plastic item that you're willing to give up or replace?
And how might that small shift in your own life contribute to a healthier planet for all of us?
Food for thought. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep seeking out those diverse perspectives, and most importantly, keep diving deep.